That is where the killing comes in. I must kill you to protect my anonymity and to take your force, to drink your blood and live. I'll squeeze your heart like a grapefruit. Today on the Comic Book Report, The Flash, Savage Velocity. Stick around and check it out. Greetings all, my name is Dominic and you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm so excited to share about this gem from the 80s, The Flash, Savage Velocity. I don't see a ton of collections like this coming from DC, but I wish I could see more after reading this volume. It's such a fun read and I cannot wait to review it today. But first, a couple quick facts about today's collection. The issues here were written by Mike Baron and William Messner-Loebs and penciled primarily by Jackson Guice. The issues collected were first published by DC Comics beginning in 1987. The volume here collects The Flash, issues 1 through 18, and Flash Annual Number 1. This is a standard-sized trade paperback that comes in at 480 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a brief spoiler warning. I will be flipping through today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's your first look at The Flash, Savage Velocity. I think this trade paperback came out last year, at least from the time of the recording, and wow, I wish we got more and more of these kind of books from DC. So this reminds me of kind of an epic collection style format. It's a standard-sized trade paperback, almost 20 issues, and it has kind of a matte paper quality, almost kind of the newspaper quality, but a really nice print. The book lays pretty well. There might be a tiny bit of gutter loss, but it's really not too bad because in the 80s the format was a lot more blocky, so there's a lot of white it can kind of creep into. So really not a huge factor in this collection. And overall, it's just really well made. I love to see it on the bookcase, and I want to see more and more of this from DC Comics. Marvel is killing it with the Epic Collection line, where you can read like a chunk of 20 issues in a run chronologically, and I'd love to see that with a lot of the mainstay DC heroes. But at the time of the recording, I haven't seen an overwhelmingly large amount of these, which is surprising. I know Batman has the Caped Crusader and the Dark Knight Detective, but even those run out of print really fast, and they're a little bit smaller than this. I know we have some of the Wonder Woman collections, like the George Perez collections that are similar to this, that are also good, but I'm just shocked we're not seeing more and more of these at DC, because I'm sure they're a good bet on the Marvel side of the fence. Jumping into this collection itself, this is the first post-crisis Wally West solo Flash title. So this is after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is like the mid to late 80s. And this is Wally West dropping the Kid Flash moniker and stepping into the mantle and role of just the Flash. And it's a really exciting time. He had a lot of popularity in the Teen Titans and of course the Flash comic itself, but now it really just puts the full focus on him. And he's young, he's refreshing, he's a bit more impulsive, a bit more carefree in a lot of ways than Barry Allen, and so the Flash is exciting. And it's really quirky, some of these early issues. He doesn't come off overly likable. He kind of bounces around, if not quite womanizing, he's kind of just bouncing around with some of these girls. He wins the lottery, so he gets rich all of a sudden. It's a really strange time in this character's history, and I was super fascinated. I've read a lot of the Wally West stuff from Jeff Johns, for example, but I haven't gone back to these early appearances, especially right after Post-Crisis. So I was really happy to get these issues, and it was overall really fascinating. I think some of the coloring of the costumes and stuff for the Flash are some of my favorite in comic book history. Him himself, as far as some of his rogues gallery as well, just really vibrant, punch out, really memorable. And even though we don't get a lot of the classic Flash rogue gallery characters in this run, you get a lot of great villains. You have Kilgore, you have Chunk, you have Vandal Savage, you have all of these people that are hooked on this super speed drug called Velocity 9. It's just, wow, there's so much here. In under 20 issues, we really cover a lot of ground. You see him fight, like I said, Vandal Savage, who's kind of an immortal. We get to see him fight a bunch of brand new speedsters who are hooked on this speed drug that causes all these problems. Kilgore himself, I won't go too much into that, but that's a fascinating kind of techno-evil character. And then Chunk, who's this dude who has kind of a universe inside of him. He can just devour just an obscene amount of things, people, whatever. And there's a whole issue or two that's inside this weird pocket dimension or something he has inside of himself. So a lot of fascinating stuff here. For fans of the CW Flash series, there's a lot of love. There's a lot of things I saw in that TV series that are pulled directly from these issues, and that was surprising. It was surprising to see how they adapted some of that for Barry Allen, modern day, from this run all the way back in the 80s. The art in this is consistent throughout. If you like the pencils from the cover and some of the early stuff, you're going to like it throughout. If not, maybe the same. It's clean. It's not blowing my mind, but it's still really fun. I love to see the Flash in motion, in action, in these fight sequences. I think the formatting, too, as far as the panel layout, is not necessarily blowing my mind. It's not overly experimental. It's still very blocky, which, like I said, is a real favor for gutter loss because there's not too many, because there's a lot of white space still. But they don't have the kind of pushing the boundaries formatting that you'd see, starting in a lot of the 90s comics, a lot of the Todd McFarlane era stuff. So it is pretty blocky, so you have to be ready for that. I think that's something that can make it feel a little dated. I think as well, some of the storytelling early on is just kind of quirky. Like I said, he's a lottery winner. He's bouncing around with all these girls that don't have a ton of personality. So there's stuff like that maybe doesn't scream at me and jump out the page. But for those, you also have some really good stuff. Like I said, a bunch of new villains that are really fun. We have his interactions with like Cyborg and some of the Teen Titans that I was really fascinated by, knowing that he has a rich history with them and coming out of that. And anything that touched on the fact of him taking the Flash mantle himself from his mentor, Barry Allen, after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Any of that stuff was so rich for the narrative storytelling. And overall, just a lot of fun-packed issues here with a lot of fun little storylines. What I like about these kind of epic-sized trade paperback volumes is, in general, you get a lot of good short stories. You get a lot of mini arcs, and so when you look at a whole collection, there's almost always something that you're going to love out of it. And that's definitely true of Savage Velocity. I had never really read a ton of Vandal Savage, and he comes off extremely menacing in this. Really interesting to see him spar with the Flash. I loved that. I think all the stuff with Velocity 9 was super interesting. Like I said, these kind of counterfeit speedsters that were almost like junkies. That was really an interesting kind of premise, and I think it was executed extremely well. And anytime you have the Flash battling other speedsters, it just lends for some really cool, depictions and illustrations and all of that. And we definitely got that here, which was super fun. I think by the end of the volume 2, I had really warmed up to Wally West's character. Like I said in the beginning, there wasn't a ton that really anchored me to him. I didn't find him overly relatable. But by the end, just sticking around with him and having him have some kind of real character, feeling like he's really a young adult grappling with the weight of all these new responsibilities and roles, it really did grow on me, and I really found him likable kind of by the end of this volume. But overall, the stories were really fun. Again, I can't say enough about the presentation, this format, this kind of epic collection style DC comic. I would love to see sequels to this. I'd love to see them do collections like this affordably for Aquaman and Superman and Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, some of their mainstays. I'd really love to see more like Martian Manhunter and some of their other kind of more secondary kind of Justice Leaguer kind of characters. And I don't know why we're not seeing more from DC. I don't know if they're pushing more modern or other formats, but it feels like such a slam dunk for Marvel, and I'm so shocked we don't have more and more of these for DC. At this time, too, I'm curious, has anyone else read this collection? Or maybe the original issues when they were coming out? If so, I'd love to hear your comments below just to get other people's opinions on this. I don't know a ton of other people that picked up this collection, and so when I finished reading it, I was looking for people to talk to, and I don't know people who have read this. So I'd love to hear from you if you have. If you're interested in reading it, though, let me know too. I'm curious. I definitely think that this is a fun read, and it's like a really cool time capsule for a time in DC Comics that I don't see enough collections for. You know, anything post-Crisis. I know we just got some standard hardcover John Byrne run of Superman. Love seeing that too. It's a fun era. I just want to see more and more that they do through the 80s and the 90s. And I don't know where DC's at, not giving us more of that as consumers. Anyway, that is the Flash Savage Velocity. I think another thing I want to talk about is the art. As I mentioned, it's always vibrant and colorful. I'm always interested to see how individual creators do some of the speed effects and new things I see there. And it was certainly fun seeing the Flash tangle with all the Velocity 9 junkies and having him battle all of these kind of decaying, drug-addled speedsters. Just a really interesting concept. Pretty well executed overall. That might have been some of my favorite stuff in this whole collection. I do think the stuff inside of Chunk was also interesting. The Vandal Savage stuff, which this was kind of named after, was good, but it wasn't even the biggest standout for this collection for me. But overall, really worth a read. To my knowledge, too, this is the first time I've read anything by Mike Baron, and maybe William Messner-Loebs as well. But overall, it left a really good impression on me. I'm curious to see what other things they might have written or done in this era or beyond. Like I said, I would love to see a follow-up to this volume that collected, issues 19 through, almost 40. I'd love to see that. I don't know if DC has any plans for that, but this was just such a fun addition and some great stories in here that I had never read, never heard people talk about, and I was really happy to see this collection and to pick it up for myself. It also confirms to me that I do think Wally West is more fascinating than Barry Allen. Not to say I haven't read some great Barry Allen stories, but overall, when I think about some of my favorite Flash comics, almost every time it's Wally West. And as we go ahead and finish out this collection here, this has been the Flash Savage Velocity. I think now the only thing left to do is give this collection a grade. For consistently clean and crisp pencil work throughout, exciting action, and a historic period for this character, the Comic Book Report has to give The Flash Savage Velocity an A-. This was a great read for new readers and longtime fans alike. If you like 80s comics, definitely be sure to pick up The Flash Savage Velocity. I really hope we can convince DC to print more things like this, because wow, must read. And that's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment, and check out some of my other videos. Until next time, have a good one.